Did you receive the results of specific subjects? How did you perform in midterm in particular subject? Okay. So generally, I receive emails or personal meetings from the students. The pharmacology is very, very tough. But when I looked at the result, I was astonished. I can share with you if you want. Where is that? Okay, here. Can you see? In pharmacology, you secured 76.51 percentage compared to pathology, which was 77, but micro and immuno, it was less. But you secured very high percentage in pharma and patho. So that's good. So there is no need to complain. The pharmacology is tough. Rather, from this result, it seems that you are very good in pharmacology and pathology, isn't it? Hmm? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Hmm? Okay, so students in the homes, can you hear me please? Tell me. Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
doctor, we can
doctor, we
hear you.
can.
Okay, and you can see the screen also.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, doctor.
good, thank you. So, students at home, please interrupt me then and there if you have a question. We won't move further without explanation of if you have some theory. So, overview of anti-cancer drugs. Last time I told you the drugs are classified according to the phase specificity, but practically, in addition to phase specificity, we divide them according to their chemical structure and mechanism of action. Traditionally, I had divided all the drugs into various classes according to the textbooks and selected based upon my subjective judgment that which one is the most widely used or prototype drug in this class and discuss this, and you will figure out the rest of the drugs from that class. And throughout this 3 years, in each block, you will receive some lecture or in PBL some anti-cancer drugs specifically later on. So this is just to give you a flavor of how anti-cancer drugs work and what are the most commonly available. Otherwise, it requires a full course on anti-cancer drugs. Okay, the goal of cancer chemotherapy is to eradicate the cancer cells without affecting normal tissue. Is it ambitious? Reasonable goal? It is not reasonable, although it is ideal. But in my last lecture, I mentioned it is impossible. The anti-cancer drugs are among the most toxic drugs used. So it is our ambitious goal. However, the reality is that all cytotoxic drugs affect normal tissues as well as malignancies. Practically, this happens. This is the trade-off. Some representative anti-cancer drugs I have tabulated in 2 slides. Alkylating agents, antimetabolites, vinca and taxanes. So this 2 slide table tells everything about the whole lecture. Second column, representative drug, one from each class. And the third is brief mechanism of action, third column. Fourth column is about which phase. You can figure out the phase from the mechanism of action. Based on the mechanism of action, you can visualize, oh, okay, this phase would be affected. And then representative side effects of that particular drug and some remarks if there are any. So alkylating agents, antimetabolites, vinca alkaloids, taxanes, antibiotics, podophytotoxins, hormones, antibodies, and small molecules, which are targeted therapies. These I have selected some representative class, one drug from each class, and we will discuss one by one. Any question from these 2 tables? Okay, alkylating agents. Last time I made a passing remark on alkylating agents. Do you remember? What did I say? about alkylate, when we were talking about the phase specificity of the drugs, I made 2 or 3 times a passing remark on alkylating agents. What was that? They would affect also G0, all phases, because these are non-specific. Alkylation, the name indicates alkylation. Alkylation of what? Alkylation of what? DNA strands. First anti-cancer agents developed chemically related to mustard gas, which was used in World War I. Although cross-linking agents are dependent upon proliferation, these agents are not cell cycle specific because alkylation reactions that initiate cell death can occur during any phase of the cell cycle, even the cells. Although generally we consider the cells which are in the G0 phase, they are the most resistant to the anti-cancer drugs, except those classes which are non-specific. Non so cyclophosphamide is a representative drug of the alkylating agents. The main effect of cyclophosphamide is due to its metabolite phosphoramide mustard, which is an alkylating agent. Phosphoramide mustards form DNA cross-links, alkylation, both between and within DNA strands at guanine and 7 positions. This is irreversible and leads to cell apoptosis. The cell is not compatible with life. There are damages to the DNA. See what happens? There are cross-links alkylation reaction between two guanine within the strand, within the same strand and between the two strands, leading to cell death, apoptosis. So all the phases are affected equally. Adverse effects, apart from those which I mentioned, alopecia, bone marrow suppression, everything, there are some very, very specific side effects related to that particular drug. And I give you the clue that most probably I will ask questions on those particular side effects of that particular drug. For example, in cyclophosphamide, common side effects, bone marrow suppression, vomiting, alopecia, and fertility, they are common with almost all the alkylating agents. Bone marrow suppression because, come on, please tell me, are you sleeping? Why bone marrow suppression?
Because the blood cells is divide
Rapidly, rapidly, they are hard resistant. Vomiting, why vomiting? I explained in my previous lecture. Chemoreceptor trigger zone, activation of chemoreceptor trigger zone. Alopecia, once again, same as bone marrow, infertility because of the epithelial damage to the reproductive tract, leading to infertility. This is very specific for cyclophosphamide, bleeding from the bladder because of the hemorrhagic cystitis. Hemorrhagic cystitis, no other drug causes this side effect, only cyclophosphamide. Due to acrolein, a metabolite, although inactive metabolite of the cyclophosphamide, which is toxic to the bladder epithelium, risks of hemorrhagic cystitis can be minimized with adequate fluid intake and co-administration of a drug, synthetic drug Mesna. What is the function of Mesna? It is a sulfhydryl donor which binds and detoxifies acrolein. So the side effect is because of the metabolite of cyclophosphamide acrolein, and Mesna detoxifies that metabolite, at least decreasing the chances of developing this side effect of hemorrhagic cystitis as a result of cyclophosphamide. Any question? No? Good. Okay, we discussed first alkylating agents. Now antimetabolites, second class, second row. Can you define the term antimetabolite? Antimetabolite. Okay, I give you the clue. One of the classes of antibiotics, which was delivered by Hakim, one class of antibiotics is antimetabolites. Sulfonamides, trimethoprim, pyrimethamine belong to that class. Do you remember? He delivered the lecture on sulfonamides. Yes, antimetabolites, please.
Yes, it's any drug that basically it's very similar to a natural metabolic process that occurs in the body, but it inhibits it.
Very good. Very good. Let me rephrase your point of view. Antimetabolite is a drug which, because of the structural resemblance, structural similarity with one of the substrate in a pathway, say for example, urea cycle, purine synthesis, pyrimidine synthesis, glycolysis, so many pathways are in the body. So one, as a result of one chemical reaction, a product is formed. That product becomes substrate for another enzyme, and as a result, new product is formed. New product becomes substrate for another enzyme. So the cycle continues. This is a pathway, metabolic pathways. There are various metabolic pathways in the body. Are you with me? So antimetabolites are the drugs which has some structural resemblance or similarity, as you mentioned, with one of the substrate. And so there's a competition between the substrate and the drug. So in the metabolic pathway, that drug is incorporated in that pathway instead of the original substrate, leading to the synthesis of wrong products. Because it was structurally similar. At some stage, it was incorporated into the pathway, but eventually that will lead to synthesis of wrong products, which are not, good. Biologically and physiologically and biochemically, they are not active. Similarly, I give you the example sulfonamides. Why sulfonamides are called antimetabolites? Why?
Because they interfere in the uric acid
Synthesis. Because they are structurally similar. Sulfonamides are structurally similar to what?
part.
PABA, para-aminobenzoic acid. So instead of PABA, sulfonamides are incorporated into the synthesis of folic acid, which is biologically inactive. So in that case, when we talk about antimetabolites, that means you think that they are structurally similar to one of the substrate in one of the metabolic pathway, leading to synthesis of wrong product. In the case of sulfonamides, wrong folic acid, which is biologically inactive. In the case, antimetabolites are several drugs which are incorporated into, especially the pathways which lead to DNA synthesis. DNA synthesis. So one drug is methotrexate. So we will go with this drug. It is an antimetabolite. What does this mean? I explained. So PABA, pyridine, they are joined to synthesize dihydroteroic synthase, dihydroteroic, which is reduced into folic acid. So keep in mind, folic acid itself is not active. Folic acid itself is not active. It has to be reduced initially into dihydrofolate and then to tetrahydrofolate and then to various other forms to become a cofactor in the pyramidal DNA synthesis. So it is not active, it has to be reduced. And there are several steps in the activation of folic acid. Once folic acid is synthesized, this is not the end of the story. It has to be activated, folic acid. So after this step, we have dihydrofolate, tetrahydrofolate, and in this enzyme, at this step, there is a dihydroteroid synthase enzyme, and at this step, reduction of folic acid into dihydro and then tetrahydro, the enzyme is dihydrofolate reductase. Now, methotrexate, by structural resemblance to dihydrofolate and tetrahydrofolate, it is incorporated into the pathway of folic acid and eventually to purine, thymidine, and methylidine synthesis, leading to synthesis of DNA, which generally this is the pathway, but when methotrexate acts, this whole process is halted, resulting in the culmination of synthesis of wrong DNA, which is not biologically active. Is that clear? So in this way, methotrexate, similar to sulfonamides, is anti-metabolite. It causes myelotoxicity. Inhibition of dihydrofolate reductase leads to myelosuppression. In the presence of inhibited dihydrofolate reductase, folic acid regeneration could be achieved alternatively by administering folic acid. Now, I give you another clue. In the previous example, there was one drug which can prevent the side effect of cyclophosphamide, that was Messina. Now here methotrexate is very important drug in various cancers, and the major side effect becomes myelosuppression. That myelosuppression, not with all drugs, keep in mind, not with all drugs, this bone marrow suppression due to methotrexate can be to some extent prevented by the simultaneous administration of folinic acid. Now, what is folinic acid? Not folic acid. If you give folic acid, the action of methotrexate will be reduced. But you are giving a structurally similar folinic acid. I will tell you how. This is known as the leucovorin rescue. Normal cells are relatively quicker to respond to leucovorin, which is folinic acid, than malignant cells. See, the same thing happens. As I mentioned, after reduction of folic acid into dihydro and tetrahydrofolate forms, it is not the end of the story. There are various other steps, activated forms of folic acid, that are eventually important in the synthesis of DNA. So methotrexate blocks this whole thing. These steps are blocked. However, folinic acid is very similar to 5-10 methinyl tetrahydrofolate. So the previous steps are blocked. It enters into the metabolic pathway of DNA synthesis from here, from this step. So in that case, folic acid, the good thing is, the beauty of this thing is, normal cells absorb folinic acid very quickly and they are more responsive. So some of the myelosuppression effect of methotrexate can be reduced by simultaneous administration of folic acid, because these are related to cancer cells. This step is related to normal cells. So normal cells can be spared by folinic acid, because that enters into the metabolic pathway at a later stage, not at the initial stage. So methotrexate will continue to inhibit this pathway for the malignant cells, and folinic acid will continue to provide reduced form of active form of folic acid at this stage. Yes.
Methotrexate is inhibiting this step in the normal cell and the malignant cell.
Yes.
Why not folinic acid is also going to the malignant cell?
Because it is an absorption process. This is the only thing which I mentioned in my previous slide. Somehow, because the transport of folinic acid is more rapid, folinic acid in normal cells compared to malignant cells, and they respond the exact mechanism may not be explained, but they respond very well to folinic acid. So this is a rescue pathway. You inhibit the initial pathway where the methotrexate is very active. It blocks everything in the initially, but later on you give rescue with folinic acid to the normal cells. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, we discussed antimetabolites, and then the third row is vinca alkaloids. These are natural drugs obtained from vinca plants. Vincristine is the, okay, although it is mentioned in the table, you might have seen. Let me ask you, methotrexate, based on the mechanism of action, which phase will be affected?
This phase.
S phase, DNA synthesis, S phase. Alkylating agent, non-specific. Vincristine, the third. Okay. Now let's go to the mitosis. In my previous lecture, I mentioned also a passing remark that although the synthesis of centrioles starts in the G1 phase and it continues, but during M phase, what happens? Those mitotic spindle, they pull apart the chromosome and divide into two, and the cell divides. So if you just focus on that mitotic spindle, what is the structure of that mitotic spindle? It is made of what? Mitotic spindle. What is it? It is microtubules. Microtubules are the locomotor organs of the cell, isn't it? Locomotor organs of the cell. So microtubules are made of what? Microtubules are the polymers of a protein. What is that protein? Tubulin, beta tubulin to be specific. Beta tubulin, they are polymerized to make microtubules. So the function of microtubules initially the tubulins are polymerized to make microtubules. They pull apart, the cell is divided, and then later on, those microtubules need to be depolymerized to make the two daughter cells, to release the cells, isn't it? So in that case, the first step is the polymerization of beta tubulins leading to synthesis of microtubules spindle. So two classes of drugs, vinculcolates and texanes, have to be studied together because their mechanism of action is exactly opposite. One inhibits polymerization of beta tubulin, other inhibits depolymerization of beta tubulins. The ultimately effect will be same. The cell will be arrested during mitotic phase. Okay. Vincristine, it works by binding to the tubulin protein, inhibiting the tubulin dimers from polymerizing to form microtubules, causing the cell to be unable to separate its chromosomes during the metaphase. Clear? The cell then undergoes apoptosis. This I think you already know. So can you figure out at which step the cell will be affected? Here, where? Here? Here? The cell is being separated here. This is the last step. Here. Enough is. Yes. So the cell, because the polymerization has not happening, so in this case, the chromosomes will not be separated because the spindle is not formed. So starting from this, the whole process will be affected. The other class of drugs which I'm going to mention in the next slide is that this phase is established. The mitosis is happening, but in the case it fails to separate. It fails to separate. The cell will be arrested in the telophase stage, last stage. Separation has occurred, but then the complete separation has not occurred. So vincristine, peripheral, apart from other side effects which I mentioned, peripheral neuropathy is very specific side effect of vincristine. It can be severe and may be a reason to reduce the dose or even avoid using vincristine because sometimes it becomes irreversible, permanent damage to the peripheral nerves. The symptoms of this neuropathy are progressive, tingling, numbness, pain, and hypersensitivity to cold. Initially reversible, later on, if you continue, they may become irreversible, damaging. Hyponatremia, constipation, these are some side effects, but peripheral neuropathy is the most severe side effect of this drug. Okay, apart from now vinculcolates, obviously it is pretty obvious. Vincristine would affect which phase? M phase. And then we have texanes, paclitaxel. Like vinculcolates, paclitaxel targets tubulin. It inhibits depolymerization of mitotic spindle, thus leads to failure in chromosome segregation and cell division. This blocks the progression of mitosis and prolonged activation of the mitotic checkpoint triggers apoptosis or sometimes reversion to the G0 phase of the cell cycle without cell division. The cell fails to divide completely. Paclitaxel adverse effects, vomiting, neuropathy once again, myelosuppression. Now the second table, antibiotics. The classical drug in this class is doxorubicin. Why do we call antibiotics? Antibiotics, generally when we say antibiotics, they mean antibacterial drugs, isn't it? At this point, let me ask you a question. What is the difference between an antibiotic and an antibacterial drug?
Antibiotic should be effective,
Okay,
while antibacterial could be, this antibiotic shouldn't be, it's not necessarily to be antibacterial.
okay. So antibiotic natural source, what is their natural source?
Like,
Plants?
like for example, penicillin on
Fungi. Okay, very good. So the original term, the true term is antibacterial drug, a drug which is used to kill or prevent the infection with bacteria, that is antibacteria. But commonly now, antibiotic has become synonymous with antibacterial, which is actually wrong. Which is actually wrong. All antibiotics are not antibacterials, and all antibacterials are not antibiotics. Let me clarify the concept. Anti, First, focus on the definition of antibacterial. Antibacterials are the drugs which are used to prevent the infection or prevent or reduce infection of with bacteria, antibacterials. They are not antibiotics. Within the antibacterials, some drugs may be antibiotics. Within the antibacterials, some drugs may be antibiotics. Those drugs which have been obtained from other microorganisms, not only natural sources, not plants or not minerals, but other microorganisms like penicillins. Like penicillins, they are obtained from some microorganisms and are used to kill or prevent the growth of other cells. Those are purely antibiotics. Penicillin is antibiotic. All synthetic antibacterials, they are not antibiotics, but now they are commonly used, I mean, known as antibiotics. So here, when we say antibiotics, in anti-cancer drugs, definitely they have been obtained from other microorganisms and are used to kill not bacteria, but cancer cells. So antibiotic here in this context means the drug which has been obtained from some other microorganisms and is used to kill cancer cells. This is the true definition of antibiotic. So doxorubicin is a representative drug, widely used. It is an antibiotic sold under the trade names. Generally, I don't prefer trade names, but in the literature and the books, the original brand of the doxorubicin, which was adriamycin, is so popular. In many books, you will find only adriamycin, which is the same doxorubicin. It is given by IV injection. It was originally made from the bacteria Streptomyces paucitus. Very difficult. Paucitus. The mechanism of action is it interacts with the DNA by intercalation. Intercalation is a common English term. Can you see in the Google? Can you explain me? Between what?
Between multiple things.
Okay.
So it's like an intercalated disc.
Hmm. So how intercalation is just there. For example, there are two layers, and one thing goes and sleeps between the two. Intercalate goes and sits between the two layers. It is intercalation. So it interacts with DNA by intercalation. It sits there within the DNA. This inhibits the progression of topoisomerase 2, an enzyme which relaxes supercoils in DNA for transcription. Doxorubicin prevents the DNA double helix from being resealed and thereby stopping the process of replication. So you can see it sits there, within there, and then topoisomerase is inhibited, the supercoils are not released, and the further replication does not happen. Adverse effects, once again, in addition to the traditional side effects, which are very much pronounced, vomiting, myelosuppression, everything is there. But one side effect of doxorubicin stands out, which is very, very specific, happens only with this drug, which is cardiotoxicity. Most dangerous side effect of doxorubicin is dilated cardiomyopathy, leading to congestive heart failure. The rate of cardiomyopathy is dependent on its cumulative dose. Typhlitis is another side effect, potentially fatal complication, which is inflammation of the cecum. We discussed antibiotics. Now, podophyrotoxins, etoposide. Etoposide forms a ternary complex with DNA and the topoisomerase II enzyme, which aids in DNA unwinding, prevents the religation of the DNA strands, and by doing so causes DNA strands to break. So it is a direct inhibitor of the enzyme topoisomerase II. Cancer cells rely on this enzyme more than healthy cells since they divide more rapidly. Therefore, this causes errors in DNA synthesis and promotes apoptosis of the cancer cells. Other adverse effects are injection site reactions like pain and burning, hypotension, alopecia, bone marrow suppression. This is happening to nausea, vomiting. Hormones. Tamoxifen, which is a prototype, it is a competitive partial agonist inhibitor of estrogen. When we say agonist, antagonist, what does it mean? Not selectivity. Look, let me clarify. If we say, okay, I think the students can see. Can you see me, students at home? Hello?
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
Yes, doctor.
Can you see the board, whiteboard now? Oh?
No, yeah.
Okay, let me bring it. So I think Hatub might have covered.
Doctor, we can't see the board you're drawing on. We can just see the projector board.
Okay. Now?
No, still. Because the camera is pointed upwards.
Can you see now?
If you could pull it a bit in front of the projector slide, we could.
Okay. I think it should be all right now. Okay, dose and response curves, which Hatub might have mentioned. This is the drug which is a full agonist with 100% response. Isn't it? Are you with me? And this is the drug with zero response. What is that? And this is a drug with a negative response. What is that? I think I also didn't. Initially, I did not, in the first lecture, I did not want to confuse you, but the hitch here is there's another class of drug which is somewhere between an antagonist and agonist. Why partial agonist? Why not a partial antagonist? But it gives some response, but it blocks some response. Okay, response compared to full agonist, it is less. So compared to full agonist, is it an antagonist? Why not? Compared to antagonist, it produces some response. You say partial agonist. If you refer to the if you refer to the antagonist, then it produces some response which refers to antagonist is partial agonist. with reference to full agonist, can't you say it's a partial antagonist? Why not?
Because antagonist means that it has zero intrinsic.
It's just a block.
Okay. Based on that original definition, we call it partial agonist, but functionally speaking, this same drug in the same time it can be partial agonist, but we can call it partial antagonist because it is not antagonizing completely. It is antagonizing partially. Isn't it? So in that case, actually, all the partial agonist drugs are basically, in essence, they are partial antagonists. Because if your point, what is your reference? If your reference is antagonist, then they are partial agonists. If your reference is full agonist, then they have partially decreased the effect of full agonist. Isn't it? They have decreased it. So they are both at the same time, but conventionally, when we speak, we talk about partial agonists because our reference is antagonist, because right from our childhood, from the original, we have studied as antagonist means zero. But if you compare with full agonist, it is partial antagonist. So in that case, coming back to innovation, once again, the terminology used is the competitive partial agonist inhibitor, agonist antagonist. You call it so. That is why in the textbooks you will find the name as estrogen receptor modulator. So because of this controversy, whether it is agonist or antagonist, it is partial agonist antagonist. So indicated in estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, you will learn later on in third year reproductive block. There are various types of breast cancer. One of them is estrogen receptor positive, which is diagnosed based on the histopathology. If estrogen receptors are present, which have proliferative effect, then that type of particular cancer, estrogen receptor positive, this drug is given. Adverse effects are generally mild. Can you figure out if you antagonize the effect of estrogen, what effects would be produced? Not alopecia, not other effects. Figure out. Anti-estrogen effects in human. Huh? Hot flashes. Yes, very good. Hot flashes, fluid retention, and amenorrhea. Basically, you are now, with the help of drug, you are inducing a state which very much resembles menopause. This is the post-menopausal state. Hot flashes, fluid retention, amenorrhea because of this anti-estrogen effect. So these side effects are different from others. So don't say just a vomiting, myelosuppression, or alopecia because these are very specific anti-estrogen effects. Oh my God. Go back to physiology. Estrogen. Estrogen is, what is the chemical structure of estrogen? Steroid. Does it resemble with other steroids? This is anti-steroid, in tamoxifen also anti-steroid drug, steroid. So steroid, is there any steroid in the body which causes fluid retention? Go back to physiology. Glucocorticoids. What is the nature of glucocorticoid in the body? Cortisone. So steroids are very funny. Mineralocorticoid, glucocorticoids, the androgens, including estrogens, they share some of the activities together. All the glucocorticoids, they have some mineralocorticoid activity. Okay? And all the estrogens and androgens, they have some glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid activity. Did you finish endocrine block? Not yet. You must know that. Okay. So hormones, tamoxifen recovered, and then antibodies. Bevacizumab is one of the drugs, which is a classical antibody. When a drug ends with MAB, M-A-B, that means any drug which ends with MAB, MAB, it is always monoclonal antibody. Monoclonal antibody, and you will find several drugs now, modern drugs are coming, they are known as targeted therapies, monoclonal antibodies. Recombinant humanized monoclonal antibody binds to vascular endothelial growth factor receptor A and prevents its interaction with its receptor on endothelial cells. Now, tell me the function, physiological function of vascular endothelial growth factor. Angiogenesis. What is the role of angiogenesis or new vascularization in neoplasia? So whenever the tumor goes, it pulls the angiogenesis, new blood supply is going. So when you will inhibit the angiogenesis, by antagonizing vascular endothelial growth factor, that means at least you are going to block the local spread of the malignancy, because the cell will be deficient of nutrients. Malignant cell will be nutrition because the blood supply is not there. So binding of vascular endothelial growth factor impairs endothelial cell proliferation and the formation of new blood vessels, which in turn reduces tumor growth and metastasis. Adverse effects include hypertension, GI perforations, and bleeding. Last but not the least, small molecules. Imatinib, tyrosine kinase inhibitor. Is there any role of tyrosine kinase in some cancer cells? Which type of cancer? Tyrosine kinase are involved. Leukemia. Imatinib, no? No, I don't know. Leukemia is a classic example. Leukemia. Imatinib is one prototype drug of tyrosine kinase inhibitor. It is an inhibitor of BCR-ABL, which is a tyrosine kinase. BCR-ABL is a therapeutic target for chronic myeloid leukemia. BCR-ABL, which is a tyrosine kinase, is detected in 95% of the patients with chronic myelogenous leukemia. BCR-ABL is a causative abnormality in CML. This tyrosine kinase is constitutively activated intracellularly, which is actually the pathophysiological mechanism underlying CML. You will learn in the next year about the Philadelphia chromosome. Have you heard about that? Philadelphia chromosome. This abnormality is because of this tyrosine kinase. Its activity is required for CML cell function. So that is why once you know the pathophysiological mechanism underlying CML, so rationale for using imatinib in CML is characterized by a 922 translocation known as Philadelphia chromosome. The product of this fusion gene is that tyrosine kinase which we are talking about, BCR-ABL, which is leucomo-gene. So imatinib, which is a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, is a selective inhibitor of BCR-ABL kinase. And obviously, you will have this drug is actually curative for CML. Very, very specific, selective. So side effects are cramp, myalgia, fluid retention, nausea, vomiting. These are very minor side effects, highly targeted therapy. I think we finished a little earlier. Any question? No?
If you can explain this